Raito later wakes up to a world with no men. Now the delusional scientist is forced to clap all the women on the planet to help repopulate. The year was 2040 in a highly advanced Tokyo. The advancement of AI created a civilization where barely anybody worked, and those who did only showed up because they liked stress on the roof of the National Advanced Medical School. Raito had called Elisa Tachibana, his childhood friend, to tell her that he had always loved her. Elisa revealed that she always knew, but it was too late as Kyuji Hino had already asked her out. He revealed that the reason he decided to spill the beans was because he had contracted cellular sclerosis and had to go into cryosleep for 5 years to wait for the completion of the cure. So they got into a fight and she left. His siblings then escorted him to the hospital for his procedure. After he got checked up by Dr. Taiju, he was about to say his final goodbyes at the cryo chamber when Elisa came. After his older brother, Ryu, let her in, he gave her his necklace as a keepsake and went into the chamber. Before going under, she told him that she would wait for him to wake up. He then woke up 5 years later to the face of Mirasu, a heavy milk jug attendant, and a room filled with female nurses. After getting checked out by a doctor, she explained that he was fully cured of his disease. When he asked about Dr. Taiju, she simply told him that the doctor was no more. He then asked about his family and got escorted out by the purple-haired attendant while the doctor kept staring weirdly. Mira, the mommy milker's attendant, took him through town in a limo and explained to him that during his sleep, a deadly MK virus spread throughout the globe and had halved the entire population. Seeing the state of the city, he freaked out and ran after seeing some creepy women who seemed surprised to see him. He ran further and realized that he hadn't seen any men. Mira soon caught up to him and explained that the virus, called the man-killer virus, had only affected men and practically wiped out the entire male species, leaving only a handful of men who were in cryosleep across the world. He was one of 5 who could survive in public due to reasons they suspected could be connected to cellular sclerosis. After a random lady tried to grab him and got tossed, Mira told him that in order to save the world, he had to clap all the women. Oh my god, wow damn, I wish I was this kid right now. Back at the facility, she explained how the virus wiped out all the men in barely 3 months. The only survivors were put in cryosleep. Out of those survivors, only 5, including him, who also had cellular sclerosis, had developed resistance to the virus. The first man had already been awakened, and he was the second. After the explanation, she once again reminded him of his new purpose as the Great Johnny Sins 2.0. He refused to do it, so she brought in his sister Mihiru, who was excited to see him again. She told him that their brother Ryu was also in cryosleep with the other men, and Elisa had gone missing. Hearing that broke his heart. Later that night, after getting briefed by a superior, Mira tried to get clapped by him but got rejected as her resemblance to Elisa was freaking him out. She got mocked by the attendant who was assigned to the first man out of cryo. Meanwhile, Raito remembered that the necklace he gave to Elisa had a tracker and saw that it was still active. The next day, Mira showed him the room of women and told him that he had to become a breeding machine. When he declined, she explained that aside from an intense desire to get clapped, having a baby from any of the 5 men like him would help them survive, as their feminist world had gotten extremely difficult. He asked her to give him a month to find Elisa first. She agreed on the condition that he would at least stay with a woman of her choosing for 1 night. Kyuji Hino, the first awakened man, was receiving a massage from 2 females while watching a movie featuring Rei Katagiri, a star he had a crush on. His attendant came in to get him for the daily breeding ritual. Seeing as he had trouble picking a candidate, she decided to get the movie star. He went to his room where Rei came to see him while wearing the outfit from the movie. After having breakfast, which was prepared by a bunch of female top chefs that he had requested, Mira, who had devoured a full buffet including Raito's parrot, told him that she had assigned a bodyguard and a nurse to him and they would be staying with him at all times. While heading back to his room, he ran into Shota Doi, who had to tutor the goody two-shoes on the ways of man. While having his bath and thinking about Elisa, the lights went out. He tried reaching for something and grabbed onto a milk jug. The owner of the jugs hugged him and introduced herself as Akira Tudu. He tried to fight away from the hug, but after she drank something and put it into his mouth, he stopped resisting. After she knelt down and did something to his lower body, he passed out on her shoulder. He woke up in bed and saw a little green-haired girl who introduced herself as Cheyenne Hoshino. After a night of wide-eyed resisting, he was pandoid for their trip to the animal experiment facility the next day. He brought them there as that was where Elisa's lab was located. After they got into the facility, a suspicious person released a bear that attacked them. After saving Cheyenne and getting nicked by its claws, Akira asked her to do her job. So she jumped and bounced off the ceiling to knock out the grizzly with a drop kick to the skull. Mini Goblin was actually his bodyguard who apologized for a sloppy first day, while Akira Tudu was his nurse. They later got to Elisa's lab, which had been trashed. He found out that she had been researching the MK virus before disappearing. Seeing her picture in the lab made him remember where they started. After finding out that her dog had an incurable illness, a young Elisa decided to become a scientist and find a cure. She was already friends with Raito, who decided to join her and become a scientist as well. After Mira revealed that the total number of men in cryosleep was around 5 million globally, he got on a live broadcast and told the whole world that he would find a cure for the MK virus. A lady in a hood that looked like Elisa saw his broadcast. He had decided that helping the sleeping men reintegrate into society would return things to normal. While talking with Mahiru, who was worried following his global debut, they found a teddy bear that belonged to Elisa with a smart ring in it. When he opened the files on it, Elisa had left a message telling him that the MK virus was actually man-made and warned him to be careful. Later that evening, he met with Mira, who was stuffing her face, and took a walk with her. After comparing her to Elisa and apologizing for his refusal to be a breeding machine, she told him that he was a nice guy. While having a bath, she went through an existential crisis while comparing her looks to Elisa's. A suspicious group had a meeting and clowned the wannabe Einstein for failing to fulfill his harem duties like Kyuji Hino, who was having a 1v3 with Rei Katagiri and other girls. They decided to make preparations for the third MKV-resistant man. Another attendant got briefed to prepare for the latest breeding machine. The year was 2040. A third-year student named Shoyuta Doi was getting his uniform drenched in toilet bowl water by Takamatsu, another kid who bullied him for being a die-hard otaku. After his daily sessions that left him scarred, he walked the hallways while his schoolmates looked at him with pity and disgust. He saw a former friend who was actually a prey of the Takamatsu group until Doi stood up for him and became the bullied. He went to his piano class. Yuzu, his teacher, was the only one who cared for him. The milk jug mistress had a special type of love for him and wasn't shy to show it. After he told her about some pains he was experiencing, she told him to get checked out. He went to the hospital and found out that he had cellular sclerosis. At school the next day, Yuzu announced his withdrawal as he would be going into cryosleep. His classmates couldn't care less. At the end of the day, after seeing Yuzu for the last time, he tried going out through the backyard and saw Takamatsu clapping Erika. After they saw him, they gave him a final beatdown as a parting gift. Even his father wasn't around for his procedure. His sister, who also couldn't come see him as she was in the US, was the only one that called before he went under. He woke up 5 years later to Erika Korea, his designated attendant. She caught him up to speed on the current events and helped him get prepped to return to school. She left out a few details, specifically the presence of the other MKV-resistant men, and told him that he would be going back to his old school, which was now an all-girls school that she would also be attending. After getting settled in his dorm room, she brought him to class the next day, where he couldn't keep a straight face as all the girls were looking into his soul. Karen Kamaya told him to meet up after classes. She took him to a classroom where he reunited with Yuzu. She was excited to see him and asked him to see her later at night. Later on, at gym class, all he could think about was what Yuzu likely wanted to talk about. Karen met him and gave him the names and special features of the girls in his class. He was still very shy but was happy that none of his old mates were there and his current ones at least seemed nice. At night, he met up with Yuzu, who was telling him all about how the last 5 years played out. He couldn't hear a word she said as his main focus was on her milk jugs that had become fuller than he last remembered. She decided to give him a personal reward for beating his sickness, a reward that he was happy to receive. After getting his reward, he clapped his piano teacher. The next day, while he reminisced in class, Ichiju Natsuo, who sat next to him, approached him. He showed her his K-pop idols and was shocked when she seemed interested. She pinched him and left when Hiragi Shunka took over the conversation. After classes, he went to the gym where the G-Cup Tudu era was playing volleyball. Kurimoto Reina, the genius dwarf with a hot head, saw him and challenged Era to a match. Era initially declined but proceeded to annihilate Reina when she saw Doi. After the ball knocked him down, he got swarmed by the ladies, and Era used the opportunity to offer herself to the K-pop stan. He later met up with Yuzu, who did a magic trick to make his latest bruise go away. She asked him to do the same trick for her milk jugs, and he didn't hesitate. Karen had a briefing with the superior and explained why it was important to go to such lengths for him. The girls in the school didn't know about Raito and thought Doi was the only awakened man, which made it easier for the spineless weeb to become a breeding machine. Doi, who had never clapped before, became a clapping addict and clapped Yuzu anywhere and anytime. They practically became roommates at one point. One day, Karen decided to take him to the pool, where he noticed that he was getting an unreal amount of attention from the girls. After stretching, they had a swimming contest for something he didn't know yet. After Kurimoto once again boasted of being superior and exposed Era's jugs when she tried to blind Doi with her swimsuit, she got tossed into the water. Ichiju ended up winning the swim-off. Before dusk, Doi tried scheduling another clapping session with his teacher Yuzu, but she took a rain check. He then heard a knock on his door and saw Ichiju, who was going to be his new roommate. Karen explained that the girls would be shuffling every week to be his roommate. Oh my god, wow, Ichiju was first because she had won the swim-off. The next morning, after getting dressed, Ichiju made him assist her with her uniform. When he told Karen about it, she explained that Ichiju came from a very wealthy family and was used to having people do everything for her, including getting dressed. He had a conversation with Shunka about his new roommate and realized that he was getting better at talking to girls. Later that night, Yuzu took another rain check because she was going through her monthly lady time and encouraged him to get friendly with his new roommate. After getting tucked in, Ichiju asked for his company because she didn't want to stay alone. She revealed that she had been betrothed to a middle-aged man but was saved from the arrangement by the virus outbreak. He responded by clapping her for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, Raito had become quite famous and was worried about his sister, fearing that the women of the world might discover their relationship and potentially harm her. The next day, after waking up, Doi helped his new roommate rehydrate. At the same time, Raito got an unexpected encounter with Hino, who teased him for still not having used his sword, and revealed that he was expecting his first child. Doi finally met up with Yuzu, who ran away crying after telling him that he was now considered public property. He then met Karen and confided that he had figured out that there were probably other MKV-resistant men out there and that she was forcing the girls to pretend to like him. Karen took him to class and revealed that despite being close to the truth, all the girls actually did like the scrawny nerd and genuinely wanted him to clap them. To prove her point, they all stood up and revealed their milk jugs. Meanwhile, the higher-ups had decided to stop Suu from being Raito's attendant, as she had failed to turn him into a clapper like the other MKV-resistant men. Raito, who was still struggling to make progress on his MKV vaccine or cure, was stepping out of his office when he ran into a lady who appeared unfamiliar with laboratory safety procedures. After signing off on something for some facility workers, he received a call from Suu. 2 women from United Women HQ had arrived at the facility to bring Suu's replacements Sayuro Katajiri and Kota Maria, who were to be his new assistants. The higher-ups figured that getting 2 milk jugs in his face might help him remember that he was still a man. Maria, a research scientist, would assist with the vaccine project, while Ray was a citizen relations officer. Suu was no longer his attendant but was allowed to stay with him as a potential mating candidate. After Suu left the room, Ray approached her and spoke to her in a way that suggested they had a more intimate relationship. Later on, the group went on a trip, with Maria informing Raito that they were headed to a hot spring in Kinmen City, where the first case of the MK virus in Japan had been discovered. Upon arriving at the hot springs, Ray informed them that they had the place to themselves, except for a group of students who were there on a school trip. After settling in, Raito went to take a bath, only to end up tucking his sword away when all the girls joined him. Despite helping them wash up, he managed to survive without giving in to temptation, even when displayed her usual antics. The next day, they visited a patient named Mrs. Taniguchi, whose husband had been Japanuro's first recorded case of the viral infection. However, he was a Tarzan wannabe who lived off the grid, making it difficult to gather information about his activities at the time of his infection. Mrs. Taniguchi, who hated the United Women, was very cooperative and seemed to know Elisa, hinting at a connection when discussing a boyfriend's visit. After failing to get any further information, Raito convinced Suu to let him relax in the open bath. When a group of schoolgirls arrived, he hid in the sauna, where an exchange student named Chloe found him. She tricked him into playing a game that ended with a kiss, but she failed to take things further. The next day, Mrs. Taniguchi requested a massage and some special bakery treats from Raito. While he was away, she inquired about him from Suu, who described Raito as selfish for hoarding his sword, yet still having a chance to save humanity. After returning, Raito asked Mrs. Taniguchi why he continued to refuse to become a certified clapper. He explained that it was out of love for Elisa. She told him to come back the next day for the stories he was seeking, after speaking with Elisa about him. That night, someone poisoned Mrs. Taniguchi. The next day, a nurse handed Raito a picture of Mrs. Taniguchi and her husband that she had requested to be given to him. He took it and promised to return when she recovered, and appeared to suspect something was amiss. Meanwhile, Maria and Suu went to the old Kinmen hospital, where Mr. Taniguchi had been taken after being infected. At the same time, Hino, who had added Rika, the hottest girl from his pre-virus job, to his harem, was growing bored with the routine clapping, and met with Rei in the bath at night to express her suspicions and question the stern officer about her whereabouts during the night of Mrs. Taniguchi's poisoning. Rei mentioned the name of Director Kihara. On the way back, Raito got the picture of Mrs. Taniguchi back from Maria and noticed that it was connected to Elisa smart ring. They passed Kinmen High School, where Maria revealed that her sister used to attend. Karen was seen off by Kanzuya, who seemed to have decided to leave the harem high life. Meanwhile, Hino was out looking for someone to spice up his harem, found Mahiru at a train station, and confessed that he wanted her. Meanwhile, Raito went into the bathroom to look at the files from the picture, discovering that it contained instructions on how to create the MK virus. Later that day, Rei met up with her sister, who was about to be clapped by a random girl, and gave her a task to complete. The next day, Raito asked Maria why there was so little research on the virus. She explained that the United Women prioritized food production, and many of the researchers who could help were stationed at the American branch. While they spoke, Hino's attendant called him aside and mentioned Hinoiro's new demands, which Mahiru was completely against since she was still only 16 and technically underage. Suu met up with Raito and begged for at least a conversation, managing to convince him to let his underage sister join a harem. The higher-ups from the United Women also discussed the matter, reminding the attendants that consent was still mandatory, while addressing the urgent need for a solution to prevent riots in the refugee camps. Suu suggested making Raito distribute rations to calm the masses, and they accepted the idea. And Maria pulled Raito into the shower to discuss the plan with him, as they suspected he had found something in Kinmen, and revealed that Director Kihara was her mother but admitted that she didn't trust the United Women. Just as Ria almost caught them, they shared the plan with Raito. Meanwhile, Ria went to confess her feelings to Suu but got rejected. Before distributing rations, Raito and his trusted companions set up a hideout with old computers in the refugee area to conduct research, as they didn't trust the higher-ups or Ria. While Raito was sharing rations, a sniper almost shot him but was thwarted by Ria sister, who protected him because she knew that his death would devastate Suu. After the ration distribution, Raito arranged a meeting between Hino and Mahiru. Hinoiro's girls later discussed Raito's inability to clap anyone. After Mahiru rejected the board clapper, Raito returned to his squad of detectives. Maria was utilizing a hacked network, thanks to a researcher friend in America who had taught her. Meanwhile, Hino tried a different approach by spicing things up with various items. Reina noticed his desire for more and went to comfort him. Back at the hideout, and returned and terrified Suu, who was scared of ghosts. While reviewing the abandoned hospital's records, Maria discovered that her researcher friend Kawakami Riona, along with other researchers who were supposed to be at the American branch, had actually gone missing at the abandoned Kinmen hospital. Doi was on his last days with Ichiju but had grown tired of clapping. He stepped out to get some fresh air, only for Karen to send him back inside, reminding him that he wasn't allowed to leave the premises. The next day, in class, Karen organized a lottery game to decide who would get clapped next. Yanagi Rhea won, but Doi immediately lost his clapping spirit. While in the men's room, she approached him and said she was ready for a clapping session. Seeing her reminded him of Erika and Takamasa, so he ran away. He sought solitude in the teacher Sayuro office, but Shunka interrupted him. After talking to her, he realized they had both been bullied in the past, leading him to give her his best clapping yet. After spending the day clapping, they returned to his place, where Rika awaited him. When the girls started brawling over him, he ran away again and tried to get some air outside the building. He attempted to call his sister, but she had been avoiding him since he became a certified clapper. Tutu, who was running, found him and sat with him. When he mentioned that the bump from the volleyball incident still hurt, she offered to do anything he wanted in return. When he jokingly asked for her milk jugs, she immediately gave them to him, but he ran away afterward. The next day, he saw her cleaning the gym and apologized for blackmailing her into giving away her assets. She accepted the apology and made him help her clean up. Once inside, she shut the door, trapping him, and introduced him to a new style of clapping. After the unconventional clapping lesson, she apologized for being rough, but he didn't mind. The next day, Karen initiated a new system of arranging school wives for Doi. His first wife was Rika. After she attempted to exchange fluids with him, he slipped and bruised his palm. They took him to the nurse, who checked him and placed him on a large bed. When he inquired about the bed size, she explained that it was for advanced treatment. Ichiju, Doi, and Shunka were brought in to assist with the special treatment, which involved clap therapy. During the treatment, Karen watched from her office with a mysterious girl. After the treatment, Doi found Shuyu in the science lab, where she was preparing a potion for him. He shut down her operation by reminding her she was a minor. That night, Karen informed him of Kazuyiro's departure. He pleaded with her to bring Kazuya back or let him see her, but Karen claimed she couldn't do anything. Feeling like a caged breeding machine, Doi went to bed. The next day, when his daily wife was announced, he stopped overthinking and exchanged fluids like a Riz demon. After contemplating his monotonous existence, he accepted his role as a certified clapper, clapping whoever he desired for the rest of the day. The following day in class, Karen introduced the mysterious girl from earlier as Hasho Cheyenne. Doi immediately recognized her. Cheyenne, a washed-up wannabe idol, was one of his classmates back when he was bullied relentlessly. Unlike his other classmates, who averted their eyes when he was beaten up, Cheyenne had always enjoyed watching from the sidelines and treated Doi like a sideshow in school, which freaked him out when he saw her again. He ran to the rooftop, but Cheyenne followed, attempting to reconnect with her old classmate. She admitted that the entertainment world was tough and asked for his help. Doi, however, looked at her with disgust, reminding her of the torment she caused in the past, and left. When Cheyenne returned to class, Doi's girls made it clear that she was a washed-up has-been with no place trying to mingle with them. Back in class, Karen explained to Doi how clapping Cheyenne could improve her reputation with United Women and possibly help her regain her idol status. They decided to make her prove how badly she wanted it, forcing her to become a Victoria's Secret model for the whole school. After 2 days of humiliation, Doi finally agreed to exchange fluids with her, but he had plans for one more degrading act. That evening on the rooftop, he called some girls to watch as he turned Cheyenne into a spectacle, making her relive the humiliation he had endured in school. To complete the ordeal, he clapped her on the balcony, granting her what she wanted at the cost of her dignity. With his latest conquest, Doi began to realize how amazing his new life was. Karen assured him that he could have anything, including her, but he was yearning for something else. Meanwhile, Raito and his detectives reached a major breakthrough. Kinmen Hospital might be the origin of the MK virus. Although they lacked concrete proof, they decided to visit the hospital to investigate further. Back at Kinmen High, Doi was busy helping the nurse measure the girls' bodies and assisting with the beds. A few nights later, Karen granted him his latest wish, Erika Takamatsu's girlfriend. She, too, had fallen from grace and was now a chained-up janitor at the school. Karen left Doi to reunite with his old classmate. When Erika called him by his old nickname, Dogi, he yanked her chain, warning her not to use that name again. He showed her the bruises on his legs, which were reminders of her boyfriend's abuse, and made her take care of them. Karen, who had returned to her quarters, had a briefing session with her superior to discuss the clapping psycho's progress. They spoke about growing unrest among the United Women and the possibility of a mole. Over the next few days, the clapping psycho became more comfortable in his new life, indulging in punishments and clapping sessions. During a swim-off, Doi played games with Tutu and Ichiju. After everyone left, he disciplined the girls for their antics, much to their satisfaction. The clapping sessions continued with the girls coming for more punishments, driving the clapping psycho further into madness. One night, Doi had another girl to teach. Erika lay on the ground beside the second bed as he punished the candidate of the day in front of her. Later, when he noticed Erika wasn't feeling well, he helped her by administering medicine through an aggressive fluid exchange. Meanwhile, Raito and his team arrived at the abandoned Kinmen hospital. Akane had pressed Raito about his feelings for Suu, exposing his lack of experience. The discussion startled Suu, causing her to accidentally break through a wall. Beyond the wall lay a large air duct, which they climbed into. At that same moment, Mansfield, a messenger from the World Union of the United Women, arrived in Japan. While being briefed by her superior, Mansfield was informed that the Japanese directors had concealed the existence of MKV-resistant men from the rest of the world. Her mission was to secure Raito and extract information about the other resistant men. Back at the hospital, Ritoiro's group fell through the duct and was confronted by a redhead working for the Japanese directors. She planned to eliminate them, but her Glock-wielding team was swiftly taken out by Chloe, a massive American student with a busta figure. As it turned out, Chloe was Mansfield, and her dark leather-clad assistant had helped save Raito and his crew by taking them onto a helicopter just as the building was rigged to explode. That day, Doi pushed himself to new limits, conducting multiple clapping sessions at once to choose his daily wife. His relentless activity edged him closer to insanity. That night, Karen found Cheyenne attempting to escape and recaptured her, reminding her that her job as a clapping receiver wasn't finished. While Chloe questioned Raito and his girls about the other MKV-resistant men, tensions rose within the Japanese directorate. They denied any involvement with the redhead, but Director Kahara was quickly found out. She called on her elite squad to take out the dark leather lover. However, the squad betrayed her. The blonde-haired director and her associates were arrested for manufacturing and spreading the virus. On the helicopter, Chloe informed Raito and his team about the director's plans, claiming their actions had incited increased terrorist activity. She showed them a clip of Elisa, revealing that she had joined a terrorist group. This reminded Raito of a past conversation where he encouraged Elisa to join an NGO to help underprivileged kids after she felt guilty for indulging in cotton candy. Meanwhile, Doi returned from his daily escapades and took a closer look at Erika. She didn't seem so evil anymore, so he covered her with a blanket. Just then, an explosion erupted outside his room. Chloe informed Raito and his girls that one of the MKV-resistant men had been kidnapped. Doi woke up in a hospital bed, greeted by his attendant. After the nurse cleared him, he inquired about the attack. She explained that several individuals were opposed to the United Women and had targeted his girls. His girls, worried about him, broke down the door and rushed to embrace him. Later that night, Doi met Karen on the rooftop. She revealed that the school had a protective barrier that was likely disabled by a spy. Karen asked him about the hatred he was supposed to have for Erika. Apparently, when the blast occurred and debris fell, he shielded her with his body. Karen appreciated that he was a good person beneath the psychosis, and she shared her ambition to become the #1 woman in the world, hoping he would be her #1 man. When he asked why she didn't want to be his baby mama, she explained that she preferred being a coach rather than a player. Doi admired her ambition and agreed to assist her. Meanwhile, Elisa's spy, observing from a window, called to apologize for failing to capture Doi. Elisa instructed her to return, as they had already secured the 4th MKV-resistant man at the Japan HQ. Raito's gang was debriefed by a new representative from the higher-ups, who announced that all MKV-resistant men and their attendants were to be brought to the building for protection. Chloe stated that mating would be put on hold, asserting that the recent attacks could have been avoided if Japan had disclosed information about the other men. She expressed her admiration for Raito, who had managed to resist becoming a certified clapper, though her opinion of Hino was less favorable. Later, Chloe updated her superior on her progress with the MKV-resistant men and expressed excitement about the potential for creating a utopia. Meanwhile, Raito pondered why Elisa had turned to terrorism. He checked his phone and noticed that the tracker on the necklace had pinged, indicating Elisa was somewhere in the country. Akane visited Raito to discuss something important. They entered the shower, where she revealed that her mother, Director Kahara, wasn't responsible for the charges against her. Despite being stubborn and missing her Soneuro's funeral, Kahara hadn't created the virus. Raito, seeing her pain, comforted her. Meanwhile, Chloe informed Hino that Reina couldn't stay with him, as she had received warnings about him and sensed that he didn't appreciate being pushed around. Maria summoned Raito and Akane to watch Elisa's live broadcast. Elisa accused the United Women of lying to the public and presented evidence of the kidnapped fourth MKV man, Kabuchi Zen. She revealed that a satellite had been used to spread the virus, and its owner sat on the current board of directors. Elisa demanded the release of all men in cryosleep, claiming the U wanted to exterminate the male species and establish an Amazonian utopia through research focused on female-only reproduction. A flashback indicated that Suu, who bore a striking resemblance to Elisa, was likely a clone. The broadcast was abruptly cut off by the U, which reasserted control and labeled Elisa a liar. Raito confronted Chloe, who insisted that if she truly wanted him gone, he and the other MKV-resistant men would have been eliminated already. Akane found a way to communicate with her mother, who was locked up, about the situation. She later met Raito, who was planning an escape to join Elisa. As they entered his room, Akane noticed another presence inside. They found Karen and Doi, who appeared older. Karen had placed the clapping psycho into a different cryochamber designed to accelerate growth. After a couple of years in the chamber, Doi had aged but would maintain his youth for another 30 years. Karen gave him a makeover, fixing his eyes so he no longer needed glasses. After greeting Raito, Doi explained that he had been at Kinmen High. Maria grew excited and asked about Mansfield's personality. Doi relayed her comments about Izanami, the terrorist group Elisa belonged to, summarizing her bold demeanor. Maria, still clueless about laboratory safety protocols, dashed to a room where Shifuyu awaited with Doiuro's girls. She embraced her sister with excitement, while Doiuro's girls expressed curiosity about the mad scientist. They were mentally fatigued from the recent revelations, including the discovery that Doi Wasniro, the only man left, continued to speak with Karen, expressing that he found Raito to be significantly smarter than Hino. He inquired about Yuzu's whereabouts, and Karen revealed that Yuzu was in a safe location, unknown even to HQ. Raito called Suu to his room. Raito invited Suu to hop in the shower with him, intending to discuss something privately. He revealed his desire to escape and asked her to join him. Sensing an opportunity, Suu insisted she would only go if he agreed to a Euro with her. Although initially reluctant, he began to give in. But their session was abruptly interrupted when goons broke down the door, demanding the couple follow them. The dark leather lover claimed that Suu and Akane were already taken in, and offered to escort them to an airport for protection against Elisa's terrorist group. Before they could leave, Akane and Suu overpowered her goons, but the dark leather lover held Suu at point-blank range. Rihi intervened, surprising everyone by tossing the attacker, revealing that she was actually a good guy. After their escape, the Kairos goons launched a search for them. Meanwhile, Mansfield held a meeting with Karen and Doi. After some teasing and small talk, Karen revealed her ambitions to take charge of the Japan branch. The escaped convicts found refuge in a hideout within a refugee area, where Raito reunited with his sister, Ria. With connections from her time as a citizen relations officer, Ria helped secure their location. After a narrow escape from a military patrol, they planned to make their getaway that night. Later, Doi finally had a chance to conduct a combined clapping session with his girls. His newfound age made his teachings more intense, and they became exhausted afterward. He stepped outside to meet Karen, who noticed his demeanor had changed with his new age. He seemed less excited than usual. She informed him about Arya's escape, and Doi expressed surprise at her bravery. Meanwhile, Raito and his girls arrived at a harbor and boarded a ship with a girl who had worked with Elisa. After saying goodbye to Suu and Rihi, who couldn't make the trip, they set sail. Mahiru handed Raito a tablet, and Hino called to commend his bravery, wishing him well on his mission. Although Hino disliked the restrictions placed on him, he refused to abandon his girls, which satisfied his attendant with her place in his life. Back at HQ, Mansfield punished the dark leather lover for failing her mission. Rina and Suu were arrested, and Doi, who had developed a crush on Rina, was taken to the screening room by Karen. She showed him Rina and mentioned that he could have her as part of her arrangement with Mansfield, which allowed him to continue his clapping activities. Finally, Raito arrived in Taiwan, where Elisa awaited him. The long-lost lovers embraced, ready to finish what they had started.